This is Boomer Life Lessons and Stories. And boy, do I have a story for you, the nuclear option. And that's not enticing, isn't it? But it does end well. The actual title of this episode is Avoiding and Resolving Conflict. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we go there, I would like to remind you, if you could, if I've said anything of value to you in this video or previous videos, please like, share, and subscribe. If you could share with your friends and tell them about our channel, I would greatly appreciate that. That would also help me grow the channel and, as always, do battle with that nasty YouTube algorithm. We're always doing battle with that, and we want to be able to get a broader audience, increase our subscribers, so that we can get the message out and help more and more people. Okay, with that, so we're actually talking about avoiding and resolving conflict. Those sound like two opposite things to do: avoid and then resolve. And involved in all of that is rolling up to this thing called the nuclear option. So we're going to talk about that. But before we go there, I'm going to tell you a story. So the story starts back in 1984, 1985, probably around 1985. And I was working on this telecommunications shelter project. It was quite intense, but it was a very interesting project. If you wanted to find out what it's like designing a system that requires you to design printed circuit boards and write software and convert 480 hertz AC signals, AC power into a DC clean power source, that was a challenge. So that's rolled up on top of creating the functionality of telecommunications and a shelter that you could just fly out and drop in the middle of the wilderness and set up a telecommunication node. So that's kind of the scene where we are, and I'm on this program that is already a challenge. This program is a significant challenge because I actually was referring to it in a previous episode. I had 18 months to do a very significant job, and me and my team did. And as a result, we had to overcome all sorts of technical challenges, as well as budget challenges, as well as schedule challenges. But I'll cut to chase on the project. We were able to finish that project 2 months early, under budget, with all the quality that was necessary to make our customer happy. But before the project was over, we had to actually go into testing, and then once it came out of testing, we delivered it to a lab where it was going to be used, this device that was on this production line for this telecommunication shelter. And there was a lab manager, right? Now, most projects literally take hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, depending on how large they are and how complex they are. You know, as an example, when you look at the JSF project over at Lockheed on the west side of Fort Worth, that project literally probably took tens of thousands of people, both if you included the prime contractors' employees and the subcontractors' employees, to make actually to develop the aircraft and get it to fly and test it out. But this, of course, this project that I was working on back in 85 thereabouts was not like developing an aircraft, but it was a very complex system. And so it required me to engage with my end user. The end user was not part of the customer's office. It was an internal office that ran the labs. So when we got through with the device and we delivered it to the lab for them to use, I was kind of wrapping things up on the project and getting ready to move on to the next project. And I got a phone call. And the phone call was not disturbing, but it was kind of straightforward. Ron, we need you down in the lab to talk to Mr. Such and Such, right? Now, I'm a senior engineer, right? And I'm going down to the lab to talk to Mr. Such and Such or so-and-so, protecting his name, about something I don't know about. So I walk into the lab and I see him coming from the back of the lab toward me. and he's already screaming and shouting, shaking his finger at me. He got up to where I was and was within a foot or so of where I was standing, and he was just cursing and doing all sorts of things, shaking that finger in my face. So the question is, what would you do, right? What would you do? Would you respond in kind, shake your finger in his face, and you get red in the face and scream and shout and curse at him? Now let's talk about that. If you did do that, what are the possible responses from the lab manager? Well, one response is he'd cower and stop shouting at you. Is that likely? Probably not. I mean, this is a very experienced individual, very confident in what he knew and what he did. The other response is kind of look me straight in the eye and nod, okay, let's have a good conversation. Well, that didn't happen either. That would not have happened either. If I'd have done this, shake my finger in his face, as he's shaking his finger in my face, he would have escalated, right? You've seen it happen, and get louder and use other sorts of adjectives, which of course I will never say or repeat on a YouTube channel or in my personal life. He used words I had to go to the dictionary and try to find out what he was saying to me right afterwards. But it wasn't nice. It was curse words. And then if I had responded in kind to him and I escalate, we're doing this. So ultimately, where does all this escalation end up? If he escalates and then I escalate and then he escalates, well, where it ends up pretty soon, it's the nuclear option. Mushroom clouds start erupting from both of our foreheads and our heads, and nothing good will come of it. As a matter of fact, when the mushroom clouds erupt, total destruction occurs. And in the scenario here, it would not have been good for us as employees of this particular company, nor would have been good or a good example to set for those that are standing around gawking at this episode. So my options were limited. I could escalate on top of his escalation, or I could talk calmly to him. I took the second option. Now remember, the title of this episode is Avoiding and Resolving Conflict. Kind of like me talking out of both sides of my mouth, isn't it? But it's a technique that you can learn and use to your best advantage. And then you will come out looking more like the professional than the individual that is shouting and screaming and cursing and trying to escalate. All I said to him was, and I didn't raise any finger or anything like that, I just said, look, when you calm down, I'll be up in my office. You give me a call and I'll come right back down. We'll have a good conversation. So I walked directly, turned my back to him, walked directly out of the lab. You can imagine the scene, right? I was not running away. I was trying to de-escalate, right? So I walked up the stairs up to the second floor of the building and walked over to my office, which was probably about 60 yards away. And as soon as I almost got to the door of my office, my phone was ringing. So I walked into my office, picked my phone up, and of course I said, "This is Ron." And a very calm and pleasant voice responded, "Hey, Ron, could you come back down and let's talk about one of the concerns I have?" It was the lab manager. And of course, I said, "Sure, I'll be right back down." I turned around and I walked down to his office and we had a great conversation. Actually, it was a misunderstanding, nothing that I had done or my team had done, nothing about the equipment. He had misconstrued some communication that had come in from some side channels. And believe me, there's another topic that can be discussed. Side channels sometimes throws noise out into the environment and people grab hold of little bits and pieces of the noise and try to interpret it. And then they jump the gun by thinking they know what it means. And they don't really. They have an incomplete picture. They play this game of connect the dots. And the dots can be connected in any number of ways, right? So I did. I went down and talked to him. We had that pleasant conversation and everything was resolved and no harm, no foul. Did I hold it against him that he erupted and jumped all over me? Of course not. We're professionals. He made a mistake. I didn't even mention the mistake about him jumping and screaming and shouting at me when I went back down. I just picked up as if it were the first time I was down in the lab, and we, like professionals, with mutual respect, discussed the problem. And again, it was not a problem at all. So here's a very, very important question that I would ask you. What would you have done? Would you have escalated? Would you have left, run away, and not came back? Would you have gone and reported him to HR? Would you have reported him to your boss? I mean, any number of things could have happened, your response was. But I wanted to give him a benefit of the doubt. But I was not going to stand there and expose myself to that type of abuse. I just said politely, I'll be at my office. When you calm down, we can have a conversation. And it turned out well. Kind of interesting. And this is a true story as well. Along on the same project, but it was one of my engineering supervisors. We were sitting down to have a conversation, and he started cursing. And I just looked, and this time I did point the finger at him, and I said, look, my father doesn't curse me, and you certainly are not. How do you think he responded? It's an interesting thought, isn't it? How do you think he responded? Well, he realized what he was doing, and he quickly stopped and said, Ron, I apologize. That is not the way to be addressing our mutual employee of this great company of ours. So I stood up to be the professional, and I can't say that I'm 100% pristine. I have gotten angry on the job, but I've gotten up and walked out and cooled down a bit and then come back into whatever meeting I was in. But you're going to get angry at some point on the job. The real key is don't let it show on the outside. Be the professional. Talk calmly and coolly. And if you think you need to walk away and have some time to collect your thoughts and reflect, do so. If it's the other person that's screaming and shouting, just say very respectfully, look, you're upset. When you calm down, let's have a conversation. You know my phone number, give me a buzz. And you will be amazed at how these individuals respond. Actually, it's occurred 3 different times. And each time I stood up as a professional and I said, look, I don't talk that way and you shouldn't be talking that way. Or my father doesn't talk to me that way, you certainly are not. Or when you calm down, we'll have a legitimate conversation about the job. Now, it's very easy to get snipey, you know, you're going to snipe back at them. Don't do that. Just say very professionally, but very calmly that you're willing to have the conversation, but not now because clearly you're upset. The other person is upset. So what does this allow you to do? A couple of things. It allows you to be all you can be at the company. Because people, not just people involved in that type of conversation, but people around you, and believe me, there are ears that will hear and gossip will erupt. Unfortunately, yes, there's gossip on the job. But when they see how you react very professionally, it's going to add to your reputation, not detract from your reputation on the job. They will know that you're somebody that takes your job very seriously, and you're going to act even in the most difficult environments as a professional. The other thing is that if you remain calm and collected in the worst of situations, and you think critically and look at facts, and you deal with the numbers, so to speak, you're going to rise up in the corporation because you're going to be more capable. You'll make more sound decisions. Now let's pause and think about this for a second because it is a very, very important point. Let me ask you, when do you think the clearest? When you're calm, cool, and collected? Or when you're angry and red-faced and spewing venom at somebody? Well, this frontal lobe here begins to take over the more primitive part of the brain, and it's that flight or fight type of response, and none of that is good, right? So you're not thinking very critically, you're thinking very primitively, right? What you need to do, though, is practice remaining calm, cool, and collective in the worst of situations, and you'll make better decisions under stress, and your career will reflect that. Companies will appreciate that. Teams will appreciate that. And the projects and the people that you work for on that project will greatly appreciate it. They do not want people spouting off in front of the customer or to other people in the department or other people outside the department in other departments. Nobody wins that way, right? And truly, you don't want to put it in the light that it's us or them, I'm going to win or they're going to win. It's got to be, we both have to win, because it's a teaming environment. If we both do not win, then we both lose in terms of doing things for the company. And that's really the most important point. If you keep your eye on the prize, so to speak, being all you can be for the company in your career, you will do well and you will rise up in the ranks of engineering and then in management, if that's where you want to go, or you will rise up into fellows type positions. Of course, that requires a commensurate ability technically. The fellows are the top tiered engineering employees of companies. Okay, so that's the nutshell. That's it. If you want to be successful and to be all you can be, remain calm, cool, and collective. And if somebody escalates, you do not. Just let them have their way at that point. Say, when you calm down, I'll come back and we can have a legitimate conversation, and never, ever hold it against them. Okay? I hope this has been helpful. It's one of those things that I have experienced, and I've been somewhat successful in situations like that. If you can learn from my lessons and add them to your lessons, what a career you're going to have in the companies that you choose to go to work for. With that, everybody, you're always on my mind. Be careful out there, and I will see you in some future video. All the best.